Abandoned ship, everybody. It's Gibraltar. Welcome to my new series, where we talk about some of the worst ships that World of Warships has to offer. I thought Gibraltar would be a good place to start. It's a Tier 10 British heavy cruiser from the Research Bureau, the fourth most expensive ship in the Bureau right now, behind Slava, Ohio, and Sicilia, costing 59,000 research points, or just under 6 resets. What you get in return for all that is an absolute Frankenstein of English engineering, taking the worst of both worlds between British light cruisers and British heavy cruisers. Characteristic of British light cruisers, it gets AP shells with short fuse and improved penetration, and it also gets a smoke generator. The problem is that it's a heavy cruiser. The smoke firing penalty means that the smoke generator is superfluous at best, and while it gets improved AP shells, it gets only AP shells, and none of the high explosive shells that large caliber British guns in this game are so well known for. Let's not forget how ugly it looks too. It looks like someone strapped an Amazon box on top of a canoe and armed it with goofy ass quadruple gun turrets. All that for the low price of bloody expensive. At least it doesn't cost steel. Let's break it down further. Here I have some stats side by side between the Tier 10 light cruiser Minotaur, Gibraltar, and the Tier 10 heavy cruiser Goliath. Gibraltar has just a hair more health, but all three of these ships have the infamous stepped citadel, which means that sneezing on them the wrong way is fatal. To make up for this, of course, British cruisers have a super heal, which can even heal 50% of citadel damage. A super heal that Gibraltar does not get. Here's some more salt in the wound. Goliath gets better concealment, even inside of smoke, despite the fact that it doesn't have smoke. Now, one area where Gibraltar shines is the gunnery. Gibraltar and Goliath have the exact same guns, but Gibraltar gets to fire 5 seconds faster before modifiers. Don't be fooled, though. Unlike Gibraltar, Goliath actually has HE shells, which means it can actually do something to the Petropavlovsk sitting bow in. Something else Goliath gets to have is torpedoes, as does Minotaur, of course, and it also gets defensive anti-air, whereas Minotaur simply has a fantastic base AA. Gibraltar has neither. You're going to see the consequences of that in this replay. In this match, I spawned in the middle flank, and knowing what I know about the Gibraltar, I think that relying on my smoke is not going to get me all the way there. I have to do something else. I mean, the smoke can be a useful utility in certain situations, but again, smoke firing penalty. 9.5 kilometers. If any enemy ship is that close to me when I fire in smoke, they're going to see me and the smoke is completely useless. So I decide to play this a little bit like an American cruiser, and I choose to perch up behind this island here and try and support my Yueyang at the B cap. And already this seems like a bad idea. I mean, I think anyone will tell you that if you're going to play like this, there are so many better ships that you could be using, like an American cruiser, Des Moines, or even Worcester, or even a Tier 9. A Tier 9 American cruiser would probably be better suited to this because British cruisers tend to have pretty poor maneuverability, pretty poor propulsion, that is. But I do see probably the best target I could possibly hope for, and in my first salvo I pop him for 14,000, 16,000 damage. So that's a good start. That's as good as you could hope to start with in Gibraltar. And luckily there's nothing very threatening to me right now. I'm not worried about taking a massive salvo to my broadside from around this island, because the only thing that's going to bother with me is Jinan, and it's in smoke right now. So, fair enough. I mean, I don't know if I'm going to be useful here yet, but I'm at least not going to get deleted from the match immediately, and sometimes living to fight another day is the most valuable thing you can do. Now, I try to fight back, I try to get some more shells in, just based on where its shells are coming from in the smoke, and unfortunately I don't land another one there. But this thing is a pretty good broadside punisher. It's not nearly as good at it as a Russian cruiser would be, however. So again, if that's what you want to do, is punish broadsides, there are yet better choices. But at this point I figure, I have to do something. So I'm just shooting at anything that moves within my range at this point. And you can see 2 solid pens there. That's the improved penetration angles coming into play. But again, that's only 2 for, what was that, 3,000 damage. 1 more for another 1,000. And because I'm sitting behind this island, I'm being focused by the enemy aircraft carrier too. So that's great. That is the lack of AA that I was alluding to earlier. Now, I probably could have popped my smoke a little bit sooner than I did, but I figured even if I did that, the CV would probably still just throw torpedoes at me, and there'd be not much that I could do about that. Didn't matter that much. I wasn't afraid of eating a couple torpedoes from the Yorktown. But this is the kind of situation where I think Gibraltar's smoke is actually worthwhile. Of course, I pulled up just a little too far there, and I had to back out. But from this distance, I actually do have some pretty good shots, like that beautiful one right there. No citadels, but it's a German cruiser. I didn't expect a citadel anyway. But still, 6 pens, full pens on the Hindenburg there, and there's really not much he can do about it. He wasn't able to answer that, because I am shrouded in smoke back here, and for all of Gibraltar's faults, 16.9 kilometers is good enough range to do some real damage. I mean, there is a band there outside of 9.5 kilometers, inside of 16.9 kilometers, where I can shoot you in a smoke, and you can't really shoot me back. But that's not really true, right? At any moment, any of these ships could have been shooting back at me, and if they were really lucky, they would have tickled my citadel, and that would have possibly killed me, depending on who's shooting at me. So that's the other consequence of how this ship is designed. I mean, it has the massive citadel. You just can't do anything about that. You're praying to RNGesus all the time. And look, the smoke has already ran out. Now, I had a decent amount of time there. I was able to get off plenty of salvos. But what I had to give up was targets in good range and good position. I mean, I was actually luckier than what I would consider the average experience, being able to shoot at that Hindenburg as long as I did. But Hindenburg went outside of my firing range and remains there now. Ruprecht also went dark, and stayed dark for a surprisingly long time. I'm actually not sure how he managed that, but... So once again, I have nothing to do here except maybe draw the ire of the enemy CV, and that's no good. So I decide, okay, it's finally time for me to pull around this island and harass the St. Vincent. That doesn't sound like a great idea on paper, because St. Vincent is a terrifying ship. It's a little bit of a glass cannon, except it's made out of plexiglass, and I don't have the most punishing shells in the game. I mean, as long as I can continue to hammer away at a broadside, the DPM, the effective DPM on this ship, on the Gibraltar, is actually not that bad. See, look at that, another pretty good salvo. 5 pens, 2 over pens into a Vincent, not terrible. But we're not getting any citadels here. And that's pretty much on the cusp of my good range. You know, any further and it would be tricky, and any closer and I would be in danger. Right now the Vincent's turning out, and oh boy, I don't have any HE shells, so I I decide to hell with this. Let me see if there's not anybody else I could be shooting at instead. I try the Ragnar. He goes dark a little sooner than I was expecting. We don't make much out of that. Hindenburg got a little bit closer to my firing range again, but now he's trying to leave it again, and other people already have him squared away before I can get the shells. So really, I'm stuck fighting this St. Vincent. And I am completely at the mercy of him being spotted by anybody else besides me because I am in smoke right now. And I'm also at the mercy of him angling to me. I mean, I will be able to do a little bit of damage with the improved AP, but it's not going to be much, and it's certainly not going to be nearly as much as what you could achieve in the same circumstances with HE. So I decide, okay, St. Vincent's running away. Actually, at this point, he's not. He's coming back. But, okay, Tromp it is. Gonna fight the Tromp. This ship is deceptively good at damaging destroyers. You think of destroyers as, okay, I gotta fight that with HE, and this doesn't have any HE, so you never expect that to go too well. But, I mean, AP does plenty of damage. It's just HE is usually more effective. But when you don't have a choice, this ends up hitting still pretty hard, which is good. So I get brave. I stroll out into the middle of the cap, the middle of the entire map for that matter, and I'm rewarded with a good kill on the Khabarovsk there, very good. And I almost kill the Tromp as well. He gets away just narrowly. But now we're gonna take Billy Big Steps, as Jingles likes to say, to the St. Vincent there, just in time for my smoke to become available again. But I'm playing a dangerous game now because look at that. That was almost a dev strike. I had just a little over half health, and now I have just a little over 0 health. I am extremely lucky here that Tromp is not within 9.5 kilometers of me. It being a destroyer, it could have come back at any time to try and throw some torpedoes my way. And here's another natural enemy of the smoke cruiser. That would be aerial torpedoes, of course. The aerial torpedoes that I am going to have no recourse against after this drop. I do what I can, send some parting gifts to the Vincent, but, you know, a CV sees a smoke curtain like that, and it already knows. It knows where to drop those torpedoes, and that's okay. I'm actually not upset about that. I'm not upset about the CV. I think the CV played, well, I mean, I'm sure he could have played better. His team ends up losing here, but, you know, he was right to focus me at the times that he did. I mean, I was behind that island in the middle, and then when I popped forward, when I popped out, he focused me in the smoke again later. I mean, that he was doing what he should have been doing, and I applaud that. That's fine. But that is what's gonna happen. I mean, you're gonna be a sitting duck. You can't leave, because although you have better than average detectability for a heavy cruiser, you're still a heavy cruiser. You know, and you're going to be detected by the nearest airplane or the nearest destroyer, what have you, submarine even. So you're pretty much forced to stay in smoke, and that's where the CV is going to come in, and that's where he's going to get you. So, or again, submarine. I don't believe there were any submarines in this match, luckily, but there absolutely could have been. You know what else this match didn't have? Radar. The Ragnar, does Ragnar have radar? I believe he does. Let's check that really quick. Yes, Ragnar has radar, but he was on a different cap circle than me. And with the exception of that, there was no radar that I had to worry about. The other natural predator of the smoke cruiser. And radar, I mean, it's more often than not at tier 10, you know? So I got extremely lucky here and was able to play a 117,000 damage game, and the post-match stats are also pretty good. I mean, I was very proud of this match, and to tell you the truth, I actually enjoy playing Gibraltar. I don't regret obtaining that ship. I actually had my sights set on it for a long time because it's a very silly ship, and it seems amusing. I mean, I like silly ships, for sure. But it can only operate under ideal conditions. And now I'm going to show you another replay in which there were less than ideal conditions. Alright, so once again, I spawn in the middle, and I think, okay, it worked actually quite well last time to just perch up in the center of the map, you know, try to keep my distance from both flanks, and just take pot shots at them from behind cover and then occasionally from within smoke. That worked last time, we're just going to try it again this time and see what happens. But unfortunately, it isn't as effective for mostly the reasons that I already described in the previous match. But I mean, in the previous match, things worked out okay in spite of the shortcomings of the HMS Gibraltar. Here, not so much. This was a struggle. I was actually very fortunate to have the previous replay and the current replay back to back. I literally decided I wanted to make this video, sat down, played 2 matches of Gibraltar, one after the other, and I like this replay because it's not just an immediate loss. I mean, I'm not going to show you, you know, a 2-minute replay of me getting dev struck. That would certainly send the point home, but obviously, that's not the most illustrative way to show a ship's shortcomings, is it? This one, I had a bit more of a chance, and just nothing came up. Nothing turned up for me. You noticed that at the beginning there, I was radared, and I'm very fortunate that by positioning myself in the middle of the map behind that island, no one was really able to do anything about it. No one was able to shoot me from there. And thank God, because there's a lot more radar in this one. The enemy has a Neptune, which I believe is equipped with radar. And there's a Novosibirsk. And a Des Moines. So, and a Rhode Island for that matter. We saw Rhode Island, he's, you know, on the other end of the map right now, but he does have a radar as well, I believe. So, I really didn't give that enough caution, I don't think, but here we are trying to shoot at a nice broadside Slava. I mean, it's at a bit of an awkward angle, but, gotta love when all of the shots just fall short, huh? For no good reason. So far, I've gotten 1 Citadel, and that was good for 14,000 damage total, the Citadel and whatever else I had hit before that next salvo hit the Slava. We're not accumulating damage at a very good pace, which is unfortunate because this ship doesn't serve any other purpose. There's no other utility. Except, of course, for being able to drop a smoke that my teammates might be able to rely on, but that's the thing. If it's good for my teammates, it's probably not good for me. Because for Gibraltar to profit from its own smokes, they really need to be used in an ancillary sense. I mean, I have to sit back behind cover in a rather useless position, or at least in a limited position, and then I can use the smoke just to make sure I don't get spotted and catch any return fire. But it's not going to enable me to reach aggressive positions. I can't use Gibraltar's smoke to push up anywhere. I have to get as far as I can get without the smoke, which is hard considering its concealment is worse than Goliath's for no good reason. Now, ironically, the range on the main battery guns here is actually kind of useful in this instance. I mean, I'm currently spotted by the ships behind me, and I notice that, and I turn around, and I find the Rhode Island right there. But when I was trying to shoot at that Holland there, for whatever it was worth, the enemy Satsuma and the Napoli, Neptune, they're all out of my range. So, you know, that would have been nice. That would have meant that maybe I don't stay spotted. Sometimes you'll find yourself in that position where you have just the right amount of range. I find that the range on this ship is actually quite decent. I wouldn't really want it any shorter or longer. But I've popped my smoke here and I'm spotted. And that means we have a problem. Kitakaze has finally decided to peek out from around the island, and of course she dumped all of her torps at me. Why else would she have done that? Now, as long as Kitakaze herself is in her own smoke, my shots are pretty well concealed, but I know that these torpedoes are coming, second round. I have to get out of here. I have no choice. And that's what happens when you rely on smoke in the middle of nowhere. So not only was I forced out of my smoke, one that I just put down, but now the Rhode Island is pushing towards my position as well, and if that wasn't a citadel, then it sure hurt like one. And I'm being radared by probably the Rhode Island or the Des Moines on the flank that I'm headed towards. Who knows, honestly? I mean, I'm running out of options already. It didn't take long for things to fall apart. Match is 8 minutes in? No, 7 minutes in. And I have 57,000 damage, which is not completely terrible, assuming that I live for the rest of the match and continue to contribute. But that's not what's going to happen. Rhode Island is pushing very aggressively, and of course, unlike Goliath and Minotaur, I don't have any torpedoes. So I have no choice but to march forward in the direction that I happened to be facing, which is towards the D cap, completely swarming with enemies. And I decide, okay, I'm going out guns blazing, I'm going to kill the gearing. Again, this ship is deceptively capable at fighting destroyers. That's not something I usually expect from purely AP shells, but it is a heavy cruiser after all, with an okay reload for heavy cruisers, but it's certainly not beating the Des Moines in a head-on battle like that one. In fact, it's extremely poorly equipped to fight a Des Moines head-on like that. I mean, he has HE and I don't, and he has like a 5-second reload and mine's like more than twice as long. 11 and some. So yeah, that's how it goes. And that's how a lot of Gibraltar games go. So, is it worth it? Well, here's the thing. What makes a ship bad in World of Warships? I mean, you might be tempted to say, well, I mean, it's not the worst ship, but it's really just about the cost. It costs too much. Why would anybody grind for Gibraltar when it costs 59,000 research points? But I'm going to challenge you for a little bit. I'm going to ask you to consider, if you were given Gibraltar for free, or let's say it was available in Santa containers and you got one in a freebie Santa container or something like that. If you obtained Gibraltar for free, would you play it? I mean, some of you might say yes. If you have a relatively small port, if you don't already have a lot of other ships to play, or if that's just very different from the kinds of ships you happen to own, then maybe. But for players that have many ships already and have their needs met, they've already found their play style, there are just so many other better ships. So many other ships that are better equipped for certain play styles in any case compared to the Gibraltar. So even if you obtained it for free, I have a feeling a lot of players would simply not play it. It doesn't even make for a very good port queen, because, as discussed earlier, it looks ugly as sin. Alright, confession time. I actually don't hate the way it looks. I mean, it does look goofy, but it's almost endearing in a way, or it's almost charming. So I'm very proud to have a port queen that is just the weirdest ass ship you've never wanted to see in your life. But, you know, for most people, is it worth grinding 59,000 research points? Absolutely not. Are you missing out on anything? No. No, not at all. But if you were considering getting it, probably reconsider that. But I hope that this video was informative, or at the very least entertaining. Thank you for joining me on this journey, and I'll see you next time.